So I'm back up um, at the cabin again. I forgot how could I forget what day it is? Anyways, May 26th. I'll 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 write it down in the thing that goes over. So I showed up today here. I got my Wind River bug hat on and my bug suit on. I didn't bring Bruni with me this time because I thought that the bugs would be horrendous because I've been watching um, Sean James and My Self-Reliance, and he's they're just around his head and he had the netting on over his face all the time or most of the time, and they're still like. So I kind of thought, no, I'm not going to put her through that. I can work inside. Um, so I brought my stuff in, and so oh yeah, there's the I don't know if I showed that. There's a wall up to the top. And okay, so I got up here and that's the temperature. It's still 14 degrees in here. It's kind of cold in here, but I don't want to open anything up because I got to work in here. Um, so I really have to say that in the winter we got a lot of uh, we must have had cold coming in through the rock, but then the upstairs must be insulated really well because how can it stay as cool like this continuously, like 14 degrees for the last 2-3 months? Anyway, so the blocking I've put in there, that's a really awful job. I hate doing it. I wish someone else would do it for me, but it's just meant to the edge of that styrofoam there is going to line up with the upstairs wall. So the insulation should always line up. And I'll be wrapping plastic around there. Um, and then I want to do that wall there. And then, yeah, I would like to get that done. And, um, and then Nicholas and Daniel will be back the end of, my sons will be back the end of June. So I'll have two strong guys to go and lift these 5/8 by 10-foot sheets of drywall. They're extremely heavy. Has to be 5/8 because it's 2-foot centers. There'll be a lift, at least the outside, to cover up the insulation that's up there. And that's all going to keep it warmer. I mean, it's going to insulate it even better. It's gonna help. I believe that I'll probably run radiant in for heat piping in the ceiling before we entirely close it in, and run the pipes down where the water heater is going to be just in case. It's not worth, like, I wanted to leave it open just to see, but then it would also be kind of nice just to have the ceiling done. One of the things I'm going to use in here is, and I've used it on my house, is highly reflective paint. There are some paints right now that actually reflect so much light they actually will cool a building. And the reason for highly reflective paint in here is that it's dark in here because of the trees. So if you use highly reflective paint, like, it's more expensive. It's kind of like a special paint, but you don't need as much light. So you save on electricity. So that's really important off grid because you're counting on your batteries and the amount of sunshine you get for your lighting. So if I use highly reflective paint, we won't need lights as often. We won't need a strong light, and it'll make it bright in here regardless. So I think it'll brighten it up in here a lot. Like, if I don't know, come into the bathroom, this is just primer on here, but it really lightened the room up a lot just to get, all the priming done. So the highly reflective paint will make it um, even brighter in here, I guess. Okay, that's it for now. So I'm this is my first work day up here. I think I got bedhead. I haven't looked. There's no mirror up here, so I don't get to see myself in the morning. Um, anyways, I decided to do to fix my I got an air pig. It's actually not completely an air pig, but it's something. It's on sale at Canadian Tire. It holds 11 gallons of air, and it's really meant for going to the gas station and putting air in it, and then you can go and the take it to your um, uh, vehicle or wherever you need air and fill it up, and it holds 135 psi. Now I gotta switch my camera around. So okay, so that's it there. And the reason I got that is because my Porter Cable pancake compressor, this one here, um, they're oilless. The problem is that they wear out because there's so much wear on the pistons. I don't know if you can get a rebuild kit for them or not, but it only holds 6 gallons. It goes up to 150 psi. And when I do the nailing of the pine boards, like those pine boards up there, hold the camera straight, um, I can get by with 60, but I need pretty much 80 psi. So what happens is when I use this now, this year especially, I I just get a few nails in and then I got to stop. So when I did that wall there, I used hammer and nail for almost all of it. So what I've done this morning, my wife forgot to pack the butter for me. So I thought, well, before I go into town and get some butter, why don't I do this in case I needed some parts? So I kind of messed around with a whole bunch of different scenarios here. So how this works is, see underneath that little red thing there, that's where the air goes in at the gas station. And what I got is I got one of these because it has a little clamp on the end. Okay. So I'll hook it up to my compressor, which I have to hook up to my generator out there. And that's why I don't have the generator running all the time. So I wasn't sure what parts I needed, but I come up with stuff here. So I bought this diaphragm, got it from Amazon, and I drilled a hole through there on the handle, so that I could attach the diaphragm on top. And you can see what's in the tank. So I have a pressure gauge there. It's telling me that in the tank is just under 60 psi, and I can fill that up to 135. And then here I've got this diaphragm open and it's the same thing. So if I back it off, it takes the pressure out of the line, and it, I don't know, it works a bit slower than the ones I'm used to, but it takes the pressure out of the line and allows me to put the pressure up to, when I fill the tank up to 130 feet psi, that'll be on that dial. And over here, I increase this one to 80 psi, which is the nailing. And I should be able to get, I'm hoping, a couple hours worth of nails out of it. So I wanted to do that in case I needed any parts from in town. And it's done good enough. What I'll probably do is I'll probably go and see if I can, from Amazon or somewhere, get a short piece of flex hose instead of that long curly one. They tend to dry out and crack easy. But regardless, I got this thing finally set up. So what I'll be doing next is I've already started cleaning up the area. I'm going to put the plastic up there. And then this wall behind me, like I said, my hair looks really, I got to wear a hat when I go out. This wall behind me, I'm going to get that all ready for insulation, and then up to that corner. And then hopefully this time that I'm up here, I get that wall back there done. I have to sand at that beam that's behind that post that's behind me because when I put the pine up there afterwards, it'll be too hard to sand up into there. So I hope to get that wall done, the front wall, the one behind me, so it matches that one. And then when help arrives, which will be towards the end of June, both of my sons are going to be here. We can lift that heavy drywall up on the ceiling, just mostly to cover up that insulation for now. And then, like I said before, see when I can run some radiant in-floor heating pipes up in there. Just might as well do it, put the lights in. And then the drywall will have J molding on the outside edge of it. So I have a nice clean line up to the pine. But I'll show you that when I get there. Okay, so next we'll be cleaning up and putting up plastic. I don't know if I'm going to show that because it's kind of boring. Okay, quitting time today. So what I wanted to get done today is I got the stuff I put on the outside of the building, it's structural kind of tent test and styrofoam up in there. So I wanted to get up there with urethane foam and fill any gaps in. Did the air compressor thing this morning. I also sanded this down because it's going to be hard to, once I put the pine up here, see my hand there, once I put the pine up here, it's going to be hard to sand in that. Yeah, that was a lot of work with the sander. We kind of weren't too sure if we were going to leave it rough or not, but the pine's kind of stained, and I think by the time we sand that down, if I get a better sander up here, the only thing is it tends to cut the plastic. There's something else, that little gap in there. It's not much. One of the problems you have to be careful with is convection. So because you get hot and cold, you'll get convection in that in any air gap that's in a wall, which makes it lose R value. So I really spend a lot of time paying attention to detail. But then again, it's 16 degrees in here now. It's 18 degrees outside now, so it's warmed up 2 degrees. It's, the second day up here. There's a lot more to it than just R value and okay, so it's not just R value. You can't just throw an R value, and I've talked about that before. It's the system. It's how you put everything together, and it's the attention to detail, that everything is really nice and tight so the air stays in. So the problems that we have right now are that in the winter time, the rock in the basement got a little bit cold because of cold coming in from outside. So I think the fix for that is going to be insulating around the outside of the foundation, like outside, like putting styrofoam and then burying it under sand, burying it under dirt and sand, like getting it below grade. That's going to help. The other thing would be, I had talked about putting that, you can buy like aluminum foil in with little air bubble stuff and just stapling it to the bottom of the floor, or even covering the rock with it. However, the rock right now is keeping it cool in here, and the reason I'm not opening up windows and stuff to make it warm, like it gets cold in here, and I am wearing long sleeves, right? Um, is it's going to go up to, I believe, 28 tomorrow. It's going to get hot over the next few days, and it's humid. And if I had everything open, I wouldn't want to work in 28 degrees. So, uh, last time it was 33 degrees every day in a row for 5 days, and it only got up to 19 degrees in here. It probably won't do quite as well this time because, um, the rock is slowly going to warm up. The sun hits parts of the rock and the ground outside, so that leaches in. Um, but overall, the spending the money on insulation was really worth it because even though the heat source is the fireplace, when you go to the bathroom here, even though it's a bit colder, but not really colder. It's not uncomfortably cold. And then the upstairs, even when it was really cold out, um, still managed to, once the fire was on for a couple of days, it was nice and warm everywhere up there. So with the triple glazed windows, like in houses with regular thermal pane windows, you have to put a heat register underneath the window because it's a cold area so that they push air up there to make it warm and that. Well, with triple glaze, you don't really have to do that. It's, I believe, R7 as opposed to like R4 for regular glass. But the other thing too is if there's no furnace blowing air around, so lick your finger and blow on it, and you'll feel it cold right away. So when you have a house that doesn't have air movement, like a forced air, or air leakage through leaks, it feels much more comfortable. So I could be in here at 19 degrees Celsius, 18 degrees Celsius, and be just as comfortable as someone who lives in an older home. They'll crank up the heat to 22 degrees to feel as comfortable because there's leaks everywhere. You feel a cold draft, so you make it warmer in there just so that it feels more comfortable because the draft is what's bothering you. It's the cold draft. But when it's still air like this and it's evenly warm everywhere for the most part, um, that makes it just a lot more comfortable. You don't need as much heat. Um, so those are some of the other things about that are definitely worth spending the extra money on insulation. Like I said, I spent probably more on the insulation than I spent on the lumber. It was expensive, but I think in the end, we've heated this place with a small stove, a very small stove, and it's staying nice and cool even though we've had this hot weather. Okay, so tomorrow it'll be in the morning. I'll be putting plastic up on the end wall that's behind me, up to the window over on the one side where I filled in up there. And then I'm going to start putting the pine up on the end wall and next to the window. And then I don't like working with insulation, but if I get to it, I'll get to that behind me there. I have to cut those bats down, which is difficult to do, and then cut styrofoam in there, and then put plastic in there, and then caulk all the way around so it's sealed in there nice and tight. That'll also help the insulation in here a lot too. And then, yeah, I'll be glad when that's done. Anyways, back tomorrow. So I'm doing a rather distasteful job today. um, yeah, all day. Cutting back insulation, cutting little bits of styrofoam. I have my outfit on, like before I had the hood on and mask on and everything. Um, I didn't want to film me doing that because it's just kind of boring. Show you what I'll show you a little more detail on what I'm doing here. Okay, so my plastic is 8 feet, right? So I start at the top and staple the 8 foot so it goes past the floor. Then I have a 16-inch styrofoam. 16-inch plastic. Yeah, it's bothering my brain now too. 16-inch plastic that I staple underneath the little bit of overhang. Now, years ago, if you can see that, here, I'll go up on the ladder. Years ago, we used to just overlap the plastic and figure that what would happen is, you can see the plastic there, that it when you pushed it together, like when there was something on top of it, it would stop any airflow. And I guess now they're kind of saying that you should put tape on it. So that's the next thing I'll be doing, is taping that joint and then the one down the wall. So here all I do is cut along where it goes on that bridging in the center, push it up, push it into the caulking so it's sealed, and then staple it up there. Like, it should never really come loose. Like I said, it's boring and frustrating work, but it's got to be done. This wall here will be different. I have to put a longer piece. I have a 12-foot, so I'm just going to put the 12-foot piece up to the window, and the same on the other side, just over at the window, and then it'll go over there, and then the same thing. So I kind of want to get all that done. Like I said, it's not fun, but I'm going to try and get that all done today. Don't know if I'm going to start on the pine, but if I get those two sections done, I can do up to the window and up to the door on each side in this room, plus the end wall behind me. And then it's back to cutting more insulation back and putting styrofoam up there and sealing it with plastic. But it's going to keep working on what I'm doing now. Okay, so 24 outside and 17 inside. Am I ever glad it's cool in here? What I did was not a very nice job. I wore the suit and a hat, try and keep the dust out of my eyes, but you still end up breathing some in because you just, like, the mask makes your face sweaty. I'm gonna try and use the shower. I don't know if the bugs will let me use the outside one, but I can have a shower in the trailer. So I'm not completely done. So I didn't tape that down to the floor, and I made a bit of a miscalculation on the floor down here. I kind of wanted to make sure I left enough plastic on the floor, like the excess I cut, because that gets caulked with polyurethane caulking. And I didn't tape that all the way down either, because so normally I would do this bottom piece here, caulk it into place and staple it so it didn't move. Okay, like I taped this side. The only problem is that when I get up to the windows, so when I start putting up pine tomorrow, I don't like putting the pine up against here, like having it sealed in here, because if I start banging around with the pine and stuff, it might make this come loose. So what I did upstairs was I would caulk, depending on how many boards I was going to be putting up, I'd caulk so much of it so that it was still fresh. Now, if I were to take the bottom and then have that all caulked and taped into place, then I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to lift it. And the same as here. It only takes a few seconds to tape it. Now, when I get over to the other side here, I got a little bit smarter, and This time over here, I taped it to the floor first, backwards, right? Just lined it up with the floor, stapled it down, and then lifted it up and then started stapling it part way up, leaving a little bit of slack. And so when I got up to the top here, oh yeah, I didn't explain that completely. So when I got up to the top here, it made it all the way around the corner. And that did not happen on the other side. So on the other side here, kind of talking out of sequence here, um, I ended up, it was short. So I ended up having it a piece of the 16-inch material and caulking and stapling that up first and then taping that extra joint there. I ran out of blue tuck tape, so I went to the red. I don't know if there's any difference. I tended to find the blue tuck tape sometimes tends to kind of like to come loose. I think it's a little bit thicker or stronger, but I mean, it's sealed together. Like I said, back in when I was young, I always figured that just, you know, if you cover this here with drywall or something, it's not going to be a lot of air leakage. But I'm trying to be as thorough as possible. The other thing is too, is when I start doing the pine up here, that corner there, I'm going to have to put a really small bead of caulking in. And I did that up there, but the only problem is that by tomorrow that's going to be dry. And when I put my pine boards up there, I'm going to have to bevel the back of it to get it to fit tight. So I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think I should, like around the windows, caulk that with a little bit of caulk and then put the boards in. Make sure there's no squeeze out or anything. So I still have a little bit of plastic to put underneath the window and maybe above it when I start on this side, but I'm going to start the long wall tomorrow. First, you want to use your long boards up first, and then any short pieces, you want to start using them up. So, well, yeah, I guess I can use long boards on the bottom here if I go to this side of the window. So I probably will do that. Whether I do it today or not, I don't know, because I'm pretty tired. Yeah, this is, I don't know. It's work I don't like to do, but it's work that's got to be done, right? Um, I still have a fair bit of cutting the insulation back and that, but the pine looks a lot better. Like doing the pine, you look like you've got something done. And when you're doing plastic, you just look like you've got plastic done, but it's not as rewarding. All right. Okay, tomorrow morning, pine. Till then. The other thing I wanted to talk about was being up north here. This time I came up by myself and excuse me. I didn't bring Bruni because of the bugs. They haven't been nearly as bad as I thought they were going to be, and it probably would have been okay. But in some ways, they do get a little bit more work done when she's not here, when I'm just by myself working. Anyways, when I came up, I realized I had no butter. And it's kind of one of those, you're always afraid when you're up north in these places what the businesses are going to charge you. And so I had to go and get butter. And I went to it's called Rupert's Variety. And I mean, it was a bit more than at home, but so what? I'm up here. A lot of people buy their groceries and then come up here because they're afraid it's going to be too expensive. And I remember when I started dealing with the lumber company here, this is a really small operation, like not ma and pa, more like I don't know, daughter, sister sort of thing. Just a few local people, and I don't know, they haven't started up for that long. There's actually two hardware stores. There's two lumber company hardware stores in town here. One's a Castle and one's a Home Hardware. Um, and I remember them telling me that a lot of the stores closed down because people would rather go to big cities that's, you know, like North Bay or Sudbury, which are like an hour drive away from here, or just under an hour, to do their shopping because it's cheaper. And when COVID happened, um, it was kind of a, in my opinion, it was like this is a time where we should be helping each other out. You know, it's a good time to, you know, this is a pandemic. Everything's shut down. It's so, you know, help each other out. You know, nurses were, and my wife worked in a store, so she was like on the front lines too, and I was high risk because of my heart. All these things were happening, and anyways, um, I had to work on plumbing, and because of the COVID, there was a shortage of PVC and ABS pipe, and I was up here quite a bit, and I had to I had to buy some parts, and like I got some of the elbows and some of the lengths from up here, what I could. Some of the stuff was missing, so I went to both hardware stores. The one I thought was the Home Hardware, I thought, they're going to be really expensive, and they weren't. So like a PVC, which is the white pipe, polyvinyl polyvinyl chloride. Anyways, um, I think it was $5 for a 45. And so I'm in town, and I decide to go to Home Depot for the same 45. $13. I couldn't believe it. I realized at that point that the stores up here bought their product from the supplier, put their markup on it, and kept the price that way. But the big box stores, the super wealthy, huge conglomerate stores, jacked their prices up to stick it to you and me to make their profits higher. Because instead of helping each other out, like most people do, instead of doing that, they decided, oh, this is a good time to make more money because there's a shortage of ABS and PVC piping. More than double the price. Went into Lowe's too. Same thing. They jacked their prices up like crazy. I couldn't believe it. Some of the stuff I had to buy because they didn't have it up here, and it just made me realize that our society has gone to this large corporation thing, and they're all there to try and keep us poor and them richer. I always have money is the root of all evil, and not having money, and I've been in that position a lot, is stressful. It's hard, and you really want money because you want your life to be comfortable. On the other hand, the people in the corporations that are wealthy, that don't need it, it's like their greed is so completely outrageous. Another example is what's going on in the Ukraine. Horrible. Those Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom. They're not just fighting for their freedom. Because don't think for a second that Putin and his oligarch buddies, and Putin is an oligarch, doesn't want to go and keep expanding his base. It's kind of like the old kings and queens. They used to conquer more territory so they could get more taxes and own more land because it made them more powerful. And it's almost like the rich, that's all they want to do. One of the stories I heard after Putin started the war was these funds in the United States um, were actually recommending to their clients to go and buy Russian war bonds because they were cheap. Just think of that. Supporting the Russian army when they're invading a sovereign country so that they can make a few extra dollars. Now, most people that I know would give money to the Ukrainians to help them out. But I can't think of anyone who would give money or help out the Russian military to carry out their atrocities in the Ukraine. But the really wealthy, they don't seem to care. Doesn't matter how many of us die, just like the shooting in Texas. It's the munitions companies, the gun companies. They don't care about you and me. They just want their profits to go higher. Same as Boeing with their Max, was it their Max 737? They knew people were going to die on it. People died on it and they did nothing about it because they wanted their profits to increase. I think the world would be a much better place. And I know a lot of people wouldn't dream of this, but if there was no Costco, if there was no Walmart, if there was no Home Depot, if there was no Lowe's, if Home Hardware, that's different because Home Hardware, they allow people to buy their own franchises or store. Same as Rona, it's the same thing. But all these big corporations, all this money that's accumulating to a few people on this planet, it's just, like I said, if you got rid of them all, everyone would have to go and go to smaller stores. And they pay maybe a little bit more, maybe a couple of dollars more, like I had to pay for my butter. But then your neighbors, they own those stores. They're not making minimum wage working at the stores anymore. Instead of making $15 an hour, they're making $25, $30 an hour because it's their business and it's something they care about. We've become so cheap, so worried about how we save money that we've just, all we're doing is we're playing into the hands of the super wealthy because it's cheap. Anyways, I had to say that because, like I said, some of the stores up here, they've shut down, and it's really sad. I don't know. I'm gonna, obviously when I buy materials and stuff, I buy it up here all the time now. I don't even want to go into Home Depot anymore or Lowe's. What they did then was just disgusting. So I'd rather go to the small stores up here, support the local economy. I think that's what people should start thinking to do. Anyways, that's the end of my rant for today.